Not again. God, that loading bug. Hey everyone. It is a very... Oh, that actually was so in line with the music. But the music's not on. Give me 1 second. The beat just dropped when I said hello, everyone. There we go. Let me turn that down a little bit more. Let me know if that's level. I've been messing with some things. Wow, I look exhausted. Really tired. I don't know if I feel that way. I feel a little spent, not gonna lie, little beaten, beaten trackers. But this was a great weekend. We have a lot to catch up on because, believe it or not, I actually won an RtN. And no, it wasn't on the Purple Queen. It was on Rhinar. And it is quite the tumultuous story. And on top of that, I think it's honestly a really great showing for the consistency of a brute hero that really gets memed on as just being like a variance machine. Because my entire weekend consisted of going 5-1 at an RtN on Saturday into top 8, losing top 8 on stream, so hopefully we can go over that match because it was really interesting, into Sunday, ran it back 4-1, conceded the last round for top 8 standings, which was just like a giga brain play, because I wanted to get in the Oldhim bracket, so I conceded last round, got in the Oldhim bracket, top 8 was Oldhim, won the whole thing. It was crazy, like actually just an insane weekend. Put me at 12-4 across the entirety of it, with one round being a concession. So I do want to kind of like pick apart the tournament run. It was just a great weekend. I love spending an entire 2 days, I guess, back to back, just surrounded by friends, eating good food, playing Flesh and Blood, and doing well. Like, for me, I do have to do well to be enjoying it fully. I props to the people who can enjoy it just for like the entertainment of it, but I will beat myself up if I'm not doing well. And I was really teetering after I lost in top 8 day 1. It's like, man, do I switch to Lexi on day 2? Do I swap to Lexi? Because Rhinar was good enough for top 8, but like, man, if I'm losing a Dromai, like there's a problem, right? So I almost swapped to Lexi, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it in the end. Gigabrain conceded. It's true, dude. Like I sat there and thought so long and hard as to like what happens. Actually, we'll get to the story. Let's just jump into the story. Oops, there's no wins lost. Hey, you wanna inflate this score real quick? I'll put it at 12-4 because that's what we were looking for. That's what we were looking at all weekend. Boom. Win on Medax next, baby. Nah, I took the Medax out. That's why I won. That's the reality of it. Okay, let's talk through the tournament actually. Okay. Perfect. As people trickle in here, they can jump in on this story time because it really was such a great event. But basically, to catch everyone up, this event, actually I can go back here. This event was part of the Realm Invitational series. So it wasn't just an RtN. It was these 2 back-to-back events hosted by Western New York Gaming, where they were each individually 1K prize pools, inflated from the normal RtN prize pool, which is just the Jubil, so that's nice. They gave us a little bump there. They were 1Ks on top of giving out like the Realm Invitational invite, on top of the normal RtN winnings, the Nats qualifications. So it pulled quite a bit of out-of-towners. Upstate New York is normally, our RtNs are maybe like 20 people normally, but because this was a bit inflated, with all the extra prizing, we had some of the Toronto crew, basically the entire Pittsburgh crew, come out as well because they wanted practice for the Pittsburgh 5K next weekend, which makes sense. So both these RtNs were like about 40 people, which was pretty big. I mean, that's a lot for an RtN with otherwise like basically no prizing, right? Only top 4 gets the Nats invites and all that. So really, that's thanks to the initiative put forth by these independent TOs like the Realm Games. You know, they're the ones out there trying to juice up some of the prize pool that other people have complained about. I mean, the Jubil is quite a departure from the extended art tunics, right? That we saw all the way back in season 1, which is still my biggest regret that I just didn't know what Katsu did and lost in top 4 of that first RtN I played in. But anyway, what's going on in chat? Was it streamed anywhere? Yes, it was, and we're gonna go over some of those games. I was on camera a lot because turns out when you are a Rhinar player in a room of just Lexis and Oldhims, you know, people want to see the Rhinar. So yeah, a lot of it was caught on camera. So we're going to go back and review some of that for sure. Tyler says, congrats, you made a top 8 in Florida while being there for work. Oh, see, now that sounds like a great weekend. Work trip, and you got to slip in a little Flesh and Blood. That's awesome. So yeah, let's see. Apart from the fact that this was a Realm Games like invitational, just huge shout out once again to the organizers behind it. They were calling it Battle at Lake Frigid because we had the doubleheader weekend, right? Saturday and Sunday were these individual 1K RtNs. So because this was in upstate New York where it's normally pretty cold, luckily it wasn't this weekend, it was deemed the Battle at Lake Frigid, and I guess I won half the battle at Lake Frigid, so that was cool. I had a bounty on my head, so there was actually an extra incentive to beat me, because if you beat me, you got extra prize tickets. But the deal was, if I won, I got to keep the prize tickets. So not only did I walk away with the independent like tournament winnings, I also had a bunch of tickets because I was winning a lot of games. So it was really quite a good weekend. Shout out to Lee who put that all together. Shout out to Western New York Gaming, Manabar for doing the events. But yeah, let's take a look at the run itself real quick. So, real quick, Sindrick is saying, Rhinar seemed to get some love in Antwerp's calling as well. Glad to see it having success. We'll be interested in seeing what happens when the old man gets the curtain as well. Yeah, that's a huge shakeup, I think. That was actually, for me, the most exciting part of the weekend. In the background, broadcasted on just an entire wall, they had the stream from Calling Antwerp, and I was just hoping and praying that Oldhim would win LL, and like that would be the reason to celebrate the weekend. Win or lose at the RtNs, right? I was really eager to see that happen, and props to Pablo. He freaking did it. I stopped watching when he was like at 2 life or something, like 6 life or something against Alexi. I thought he was just out. That was it. And Lexi was probably going to lose the Azuri, and we'd have an Azuri like winning the thing. That was going to be a cool timeline as well. But then he actually did beat the Lexi, and he won the whole thing. So huge props to Pablo, because that was an insane run. But speaking of my own insane run here, that first Saturday RtN, I almost missed it, actually. I was almost late because I thought it started at 12. Turns out it started at 10, and I got there at like 9:45. I knew I was going to play Rhinar on this day, at least. I had Rhinar and Dromai with me, and then I had a friend who could lend me a Lexi deck. No Levia in the bag, sorry. So day one, I wanted to just play Rhinar and maybe meta warp a little bit. Make people scared of the fact that someone who's pretty good at Rhinar was going to be in the room, and maybe scare people off Oldhim, you know, see what would happen. So day one, we show up on Rhinar, and really, like, no expectations. Like, I had no idea the scope of who would be there, what kind of quality of player would be there yet, but as soon as it started to fill out, we saw it would be around 40 people, and to see all the team jerseys. I mean, the Smash with Green Tree, like all the Pittsburgh guys, Pat from like the Runaways was out there. Pretty stacked field, honestly. And right off the bat, going into it, I actually got paired against Chris on Dash. And oops, that was actually not a win yet. That was a loss. And round one, I was actually pretty excited to see this matchup. Pittsburgh guys don't exist. Hey, you were there too, Sin. What's up, man? Good to see you here. Is it you, or is the stream on 144p? That's on you. It is not 144p. It's like, should be 1080. Should be 1080. Oh, Nathaniel. Sexy beast yourself. Yeah, so round one of day one, I played against a Dash, and when I play Levia into Dash, I have like a very specific pure fatigue strat, because I'll take the Arc Smashes, screw it. Like, I just want that matchup to be free, right? Also, the music's a bit loud in my ear. Give me 1 second. Turn that down a smidge. But with Rhinar, I thought maybe I could play it a bit more aggressive. I hadn't really experimented with the matchup much. You're not the only one at 144p? Really? Okay, 1 second. Let's see here. What is going on? Settings. Video. Stream. Output. Output is there. No, it is 1080p. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. But it is 1080p. Andrew, hello, sir. Thank you. Look, people in the chat confirming. Thank you, people. Thank you, people. But yeah, so round one I was against a Dash, and Chris was a super friendly guy. We, started off strong. I definitely was a little bit confident because I did bring the Arc Smashes in, but I didn't know if that meant I was going to full fatigue it or still just play to have Rhinar hands and maybe just like out of nowhere win. Because the difference between Rhinar and Levia in this matchup is with Levia, you if you commit to damage, like if you commit to blood debt, then you have to keep attacking, right? So your game plan has to be full fatigue. Has to be. If you ever try to have a good turn and then have an off turn, that's just not how Levia can play, right? You'll take blood debt. So with Rhinar... Hey, thank you. All right. I tried to lower the audio on that. I might lower it a bit more. That was probably a bit loud. But thank you for subscribing there. So yeah, I just didn't know the matchup well enough. So I played the early hands very defensive. I was hoping to see like an Arc Smash early, and I think I did see an Arc Smash on like turn 2 or something. Blew up his induction chamber. He was primarily on like a mid-range dash strat, but definitely committed to boost in this matchup. He was not going full defense. It was not like a tree frog dash or anything. So I saw a pretty early Arc Smash, blew up his induction chamber, and felt like, okay, that's enough room that maybe we can fight to keep some more aggressive hands here, because, I don't know. Honestly, the call should have been, if I blew up an induction early, let's just go pure fatigue. But whatever, the next hand I made a play to keep a Blood Rush Beast Within hand, because, I mean, it was a Blood Rush Beast Within hand. Like, I felt like you kind of just keep that hand. It seems to be kind of the best thing your deck can do. So I took a bunch of damage to keep this hand, just because I wanted to kind of keep both play lines open of maybe just burst him down and win, maybe just fall back and start blocking out because Rhinar has that option. And my Blood Rush Beast Within banishes 2 Blood Rushes. Because Beast Within, right, it will start banishing off the top until you find a 6. The first 2 banishes are Beast Within, are Blood Rushes, and then it draws me like a red or something. So in one turn, I instantly lost both game plans that I was trying to leave open. I lost the fatigue strat because I took damage to try to have this turn, and I self-inflicted 3 damage to myself because of the Beast Within. So that plan was just completely washed. Could no longer fatigue. I'd thrown too much life out the window. I could also no longer play a real Rhinar game because in one turn, all my Blood Rushes disappeared. All my Blood Rushes disappeared. So that kind of sucked. The game just spiraled, and even though I did try to pivot and fatigue him out, I just lost too much life because of that early turn. So felt bad about that, but it was a learning moment because I really hadn't played that matchup yet and decided, okay, next time I'll just play it pure fatigue. Makes more sense. Makes more sense. And then my next round, actually I did write these down somewhere. Oh yeah, that's right. My next round was against a Rhinar Mirror. And this was a really interesting game because my opponent was relatively new, but my first cycle was garbage. Like, Blood Rush, all reds. Like, I don't even want to start pitching a red for a Blood Rush. Like, hell no, I'm going to save it. So I basically saved all my damage until second cycle. And my opponent was having some decent turns, nothing too crazy. And we were in second cycle with both of us at, like, 20 plus life still, right? The difference was he'd burn threats early game and had some inconsistencies just pop up. And I'd saved threats all through the second half of the game. So when second cycle came up, we were like 30 minutes in, and the game just like instantly ended because I had the power in deck that I'd actually set up when I was spending turns of just like, throw 6 here, pitch this in, whatever, and he just had nothing left. So I felt like I played that pretty well, because in a Rhinar matchup, like if you just force Blood, I didn't take Remembrance in the list or anything for that match. If you were just forcing a bunch of bad Blood Rush hands and then they don't actually amount to enough to win the game, I felt like that was leaving yourself open to just completely get walked, even if it was a newer Rhinar player. So I enjoyed how I played that game, and good job to my opponent because, he did what he could. Then we had I believe this was a Dromai. Let me pull up my notes because I did write this down. I did write this down. Settings. Rhinar. Yeah, okay. Next up, I did play against a Dromai, and this was just a very easy win. It was Empress Dromai, and that list, like, it's very hard for them to stick a overwhelmingly scary board, so just popping when you can, and, also don't disrespect the fact that they could just dump a lot of 0-for-4s on you, still take those kind of blocks. Don't try to hold your entire hand expecting like they might pivot into like a Chromai thing and you need to save 2 6s. Now, I definitely played it very defensive, and just waited for the Blood Rushes, cleared their board, and I mean it was just a pretty easy game. Then we had, next was an Oldhim, I believe. Is this the Oldhim? No, sorry. This was a Lexi. That's what it was. Next I played against a Lexi, and I think I really just got lucky this game. mostly because my Lexi player was just like not playing it perfectly. He's a player who's been on Lexi since pretty much day one, so I was a little intimidated by that. Like, he's someone who's been playing Lexi since even before she was good. But I don't know if it was just like a question of him just adding a bunch of new cards and not having a bunch of experience yet, or just maybe a bit of like poor draw sequence or something, but his deck just wasn't doing anything very impressive. And every time he tried to like wait for, you know, a big 6-card payoff turn, it just wouldn't quite line up the way you would expect a Lexi turn would when they go for that, and into Rhinar they just like throw 40 damage at you, and what can you do? It just kind of never happened. So yeah, I mean, like, I just won. I didn't do anything special. The Lexi deck just like didn't do anything special either, so it was kind of just a weird game. And then I played against an Oldhim, and this was Charles Dunn on Oldhim, who, if you know Charles Dunn, is an absolute fantastic player. I forget his entire list of accomplishments, but he has won so many Battle Hardens in the area, topped a bunch of premier events, and is just one of the guys who, ever since moving to New York, I really am eager to see, because he'll travel out to all the kind of mid-tier stuff out here, and I can normally try to catch a game with him and give him a run for his money, because he historically plays Guardian, and funny enough, like, you know, Brute, even Levia tends to be pretty good into Guardian, so we've had some pretty good games over the years, or over the months rather. And sure enough, we play the Oldhim match, and he learned a lot about this matchup because his best friend Pat and I played at the Pro Tour, and Pat was the Oldhim who I lost to. And so they definitely not only knew what I was like kind of up to, or what Rhinar was up to overall, but what I was up to specifically. The fact that like my deck is none of the draw discards, very conservative, just like all blood rushes. He played the game exceptionally well, but I won through pitch stack, and pretty much just to the point of like no interaction, right? That's like what Rhinar's trying to do in the match. But the first cycle was pretty stressful. I wasn't winning through first cycle at all that game. It was just not possible. So we went for the pitch stack route and won with a bunch of Intims and Savage Feast off Tunic, which felt pretty good. So at that point I was 5-1 and felt like I had a great shot actually to at least top 4. Top 8 was like 1 Dromai, 2 Lexi, me, and the rest were Oldhims, I think. So it was a very Oldhim heavy top 8, and my round 1 pairing was against Dromai. This was a Big Dragon Dromai, though, and Big Dragon Dromai is one that I have way less experience against, mostly because people don't tend to play that version on Talishar. Most people play like the Empress, the more redline version. So I knew what I was doing into that matchup just from playing Levia for so long, but with Rhinar, it's a little bit trickier to line up like how you're going to clear Mirageis, for example, and so I thought I had in my list a pretty decent way around that. I added the blue Savage Feast, we'll take a look at the list in a second, to actually have play in this kind of matchup specifically, where you can try to use like a blue Savage Feast hand with Scabskins to just take a clear turn. You know, throw the blue Savage Feast, kill a Mirageis, be able to claw, kill like a Chromai, claw, kill a Vincerakai, Passing Mirage, like whatever they're trying to stick. So I specifically did have like tech in the list for this matchup, but it doesn't work when you get Tomultide on turn 2 and lose Scabskins. So unfortunately, the game just like kind of ended immediately because turn 2, literally turn 2, it was on stream. Peyton, my opponent, who's a good friend of mine as well, Tomultides my Scabskins, and all of my ability to really board clear is gone because my only way to go wide in this deck is Blood Rush and Scabs. And if I spend all my Blood Rushes board clearing, then I'm never going to actually win. So it was a really awkward game. And I'm glad it was on stream because there's like one big decision point that I think I probably should have just played a bit more greedy around instead of like keep trying to play safe, because playing safe doesn't work when you don't have ways to like pivot and board clear because Scabs is gone, right? So it was an interesting game. I do feel like I got high rolled a little bit because like Tomultide turn 2 is pretty insane. Like I didn't even get to use Scabs, you know, I didn't even get to block with it. But it's fine. You know, it was a good friend of mine. I'm happy he made top 4. Just a little embarrassed that it was a Dromai loss, is what it is. So this is what kind of shook me in playing Rhinar day 2. I felt, man, I lost like 2 good matchups, you know? I lost 2 good matchups. I lost to Dash, which should be a win. I just had the Blood Rush thing happen and just kind of tilted out of existence. And then had the Dromai loss happen, which also should be a good matchup. So, a little confused about my run on Saturday because even though it was 5-1, I think I was like second seed going into top 8, I still was losing games that I didn't think I should have. So I really waffled on like whether or not I wanted to take Lexi on Sunday and just kind of have like scared people off of Oldhim with Rhinar because, you know, I was doing really well on Rhinar. I was beating Oldhims. People were scared of me. And I was hoping maybe that would have some kind of effect, and then I could play Lexi into a field of less Oldhims because I'm not that good on Lexi, and it takes a good Lexi to beat a good Oldhim, and everyone's running like the Buckling Blow Buckle tech. And so I didn't want to, I wanted to kind of like push Oldhims away. So I thought maybe that's what I do. Maybe I play Lexi on Saturday or on Sunday. But I played one test game with a friend that morning and hated Lexi. Hated Lexi. I tried one game in paper and I played a bit on Talishar and just hated the deck. So we decided pretty much with like 1 minute left, now let's run Rhinar back and just see what happens. So day 2, it was actually not the same players. There were a lot more Pittsburgh people on Sunday. Just funny enough, the number was the same. So day 2, we run it back on Rhinar, and my round 1 is a Sand Scour Greatbow Azalea. And thank goodness this deck topped the Calling at Baltimore, because otherwise I would have no idea what this deck was doing. But because it topped in Baltimore, a ton of people have been playing it on Talishar. A ton of people. So I had a lot of experience into this matchup from playing it online when I was testing Rhinar, and I had very specific tech for this matchup. I didn't know it was going to be Sand Scour Greatbow Azalea, but I feel like, you know, I kind of just had to hedge that it would be that version, and so I made all the correct sideboard choices. I was pretty happy with it, and it was a pretty convincing win. It did go to second cycle, which my opponent was really impressed by, but you know, the only turns he's really pushing through damage when I'm playing it super conservatively is when he lines up a Remorseless or like a Release the Tension. Otherwise, I'm always playing with like a Defense React in Arsenal. I've got Reinforce the Lines, and can really kind of play through his pumps, get to second cycle, and just win the game from there. I'm not going to try to just play my first cycle into an Azalea's first cycle and hope that my Blood Rushes don't line up with his Red in the Ledgers, right? Like that's just like saying I want to win through random draw sequence, which I don't think is like the right way to play that matchup. So I didn't play that way. I played for second cycle and won. So I was pretty happy with that. Then we played into the dash again. And this is the same dash as day 1. And this is pretty funny because we'd been hanging out. We'd been talking. A really friendly guy. He actually works in the movie industry. So I had a lot of questions for him about streaming and stuff. So at this point, I decided he saw what I tried to do yesterday when I tried to actually play the game into him. Not fatigue, but just, you know, play for Blood Rushes, and I lost, so I obviously personally wasn't going to make that choice to play that way again. So I'm going to try to, like, you know, subvert his expectations of how I play, and now pivot to hard fatigue, like never even attack, never even let him trigger Crown of Providence, you know, just literally do not attack. Save every HP so that I can actually play out my Arc Smashes and deck him out. And it worked. Like, it did just work. It was like actually like a little bit tighter than I wanted it to be, because he caught on from like turn 1, you know, that I'm playing that way. And so he was so careful, like literally counting out his deck to make sure that when he pitched into max velocity, he wouldn't boost it off. Like, the man was, I mean, he's an amazing dash player, and he was specifically like pitching in max velocities so that he could line them up and have like a max V, max V, max V turn. It was incredible. Like, honestly, his play was incredible. But at the end of the day, I just stuck it out. Like, you do in that matchup just have an advantage because Arc Smash will blow up Induction Chamber, and then they kind of get stuck at the point where if they don't want to boost, then their turn is like dealing, you know, 2 damage if they don't want to spend a card, or something, you know, where they commit a card and you're going to block anyway. So it is just favored if you play it that way. And it was a win. It was a pretty convincing win. Then the next game was... what was my next match? I think it was Alexi. Let me check. Oh god, this game was so good. It was an Azuri. Where's Azuri? There she is. My next match was an Azuri, and this guy was such a funny opponent. I absolutely love playing this guy. He's from Canada. Actually, both these guys were from Canada. All 3 of my opponents were from Canada, Toronto. And he was on Pure Fatigue Azuri. And I love that deck. I'd been playing it a ton in preparation as a pick I might play for the Pro Tour. So I knew his deck in and out. And I'd seen him play it as well. So I knew that it wasn't Redline because he was like the only Azuri in the room. So I boarded into like 65 cards and just played the matchup very, very carefully because they don't actually swap in that much. What you're playing around is mostly Shred. Like they're going to run the full playsets of Shred, like maybe even Cut to the Chase. So I played the matchup very carefully. And what I mean by that is not necessarily second cycle, but just be very key about like wasting your good cards. You know, if he's attacking for something, I'm not just going to throw like a hand that's like a swing big smash instinct, like, you know, a blue and a whatever. I'm not going to sack like one of my trump cards and a red just to block damage. I actually need my reds to be played and be good. So there were a couple like inefficient turns that I played out where, oh, thank you for the sub, Nicholas. All right, hopefully, oh my God, that's like a little loud. Let me turn that down, I hope. So there were a couple turns where I would like hold a card in hand just because it was a good red and I didn't want to use it blocking, so that I could make sure in sequence I was playing out like a lot of good strong reds for a cycle and then hope that he didn't just banish all my blood rushes. This is a really interesting game. It went really long, but I did win really convincingly in the end, like really convincingly. I think it was like 19-0. So that was a great win. I absolutely love this game. And let me just note, by the way, yeah, they were on Twitch. We're going to review some games after this. Let me just note, out of all these games, I played the deck so slow. The only first cycle game I had was like these two. The Dromai, the Redline Dromai and the Lexi were the only first cycle games I played. This is such like a slow, methodical Rhinar build, and I loved it. I loved every second of it. It's like how I wish I could play Levia more, where you just understand your deck so well, and you're never put in positions of, Jesus Christ, like I could just blow up if my next hand sucks, which is what happens with Levia. In Rhinar, you can just play very slow and steady, and my deck was absolutely packed with defensive tools, so that helped a bunch as well. And that was really what was winning most of my games, was second cycle pitch stacking. First cycle, I'd play out like probably 2 really good blood rushes. I'd pitch another one, and if the 2 didn't set me up in a position to just make them block with my 2-card 7s, 2-card 8s, 2-card 6s, whatever it is, because of fear of Reckless, then I had guaranteed win in the second cycle with like an Alpha Rampage or that last Blood Rush turn. So it was a really, God, like I just loved playing these games. They were so fun. My next match then was against Lexi, and this one was an interesting game. This was against Pat Eschke. No, there were a lot of Lexi. The thing is, they were losing to the Oldhims. Because the Oldhims were all on like the new Buckling Blow Tech, and so the Lexis were like not walking the top tables. They were getting knocked down because the Oldhims were everywhere. This was such a heavy Oldhim field. I know it doesn't look like it yet, but I promise you. Yeah, so then my next round is against Pat Eschke, and this is a strange round, and I'm gonna talk about this on stream to an extent, but we were called for feature match, right? And this matchup is very much like just draw sequence. If there's any way I have a chance to win, it is just because my deck drew the nuts. But if Lexi's deck just draws like it's supposed to, then Lexi wins every time. That's just how the matchup goes. It is not a very fun matchup to play, especially not when you're playing against a god like Pat Eschke. Oh, thank you for subscribing. Okay, hold on. I have to go and like... I'm panicking. It's so loud. I need to go into Stream Elements and like manually turn that down. I can't control it within OBS. Give me 1 second. Stream, because it's a plugin. Stream Elements. Let me open this real quick. I think I can edit it live. Profile. Other streaming tools, overlays, edit. Okay, give me 1 second. It will let me change it. Alert box. Settings. Alright, we're going to turn that down to like a healthy 25%. That should be better. 25% across the board. I do love that clip though. I just added it actually. So any new subscribers, tips, whatever, it should play me doing the Levia cosplay. Okay, that has been edited. Back to the story. Yeah, so this was a change, by the way. that I think I inspired, because Pat on day 1 was on Oldhim, and he swapped to Lexi on day 2. Now, he had just made top 4 day before on Oldhim, so he got what he wanted. He got his Nats invite. So maybe he was playing Lexi just to experiment with a new deck. Maybe he was playing Lexi because I scared him off Oldhim. That was the idea. That's what I had in my head. Oh, did we lose chat because I saved it? Yeah. So it should refresh. But we get called for feature, right? And I'm super friendly with Pat. We've hung out at a bunch of events. We've had drinks together. We've bonded. We play other games outside of Flesh and Blood together as well. Plug to Regicide. A good friend of mine. Anyway, so we go up to feature, and I basically tell him, hey, you want to do something cool for stream? What if we just play open hand? And that way stream can, have some extra entertainment, because on stream you couldn't see hands. There was no hand camera, which is kind of my specialty, right? So he was a little hesitant, but I kind of explained how it is. Like, look, man, the only way I have a shot of winning, is just pure draw sequence. So, we can just play open hand and at least, make it entertaining for viewers, if you're willing. And he, in the end, said yes, because he agreed, the matchup is so insanely favored for him. And in a way, that would advantage him if he saw my hand and, knew that I would have, the nuts or whatever. So, we decided to play open hand for stream, long story short. And, in between, when we started doing that, which was, from turn 1 to, turn 4, we were chit-chatting about it, and I had said, oh, you know what, Pat, if we keep playing this way, don't worry about it, I'll concede no matter what. Something like this, right? Just no, hard agreements were made. It was just something to basically talk about the fact that we were playing open hand in an RtN, right? But they took us off feature because the casters didn't like that we were playing open hand. They said it was, too distracting or something. So then all of a sudden, the whole point of us playing open hand gets taken away because coverage took us off, which I've never, seen before, by the way. If you're already on stream, just let it happen. But they took us off coverage because they didn't like that we were playing open hand. So at that point, I said to Pat, oh, well, this is not what I was expecting. Can we play a real game? And he agreed, let's play a real game. And at this point, I think only 3 turns had passed. I was at 33, he was at 34. Nothing had really happened yet. But that's basically the story arc. We were called to stream. We decided, let's play open hand because this matchup is just draw sequence. I at some point said, oh, don't worry about it. Because we're playing this way, I'll concede. But then we get taken off feature, and I ask, can we play a real game then? And he agreed. So we continue playing the game out. And like I said, it literally was just a draw sequence game, and I rip into just Blood Rush into Blood Rush into a reckless swing win, right? So I do win that game. And it was very unexpected, obviously, because he's an insane player. And I kind of went into it thinking the matchup was awful. But there was the whole roller coaster of we kind of joked about the game because we wanted to do something funny for coverage, but then they took us off coverage, so we went back to playing a real game. And we talked about it after the fact of okay, this is a weird situation now, because I did say at one point that I would concede because we were playing open hand. And yet then we stopped playing open hand because coverage didn't like it. So I mean, we're friends about it. This was not a super weird situation or anything. So we talked it through and decided to kind of just air it out. What would be most fair in the situation is I would just give him the top 8 prizing and take the win, because there was no hard agreement on concession or anything. That was done because we were going to be on stream, but then we were taken off. So it got really murky, honestly. But the agreement we came to was I would give him the top 8 prizing, the Cold Full Hero, and report it as a win. Because we both agreed, and he was the first to say it, you did win, fair and square. That was a great game, good experience. So in a way it worked out for me that we were taken off coverage, because if we'd stayed on coverage, then sure, we're playing a meme game and I'm conceding, but they took us off coverage. So in a way, I guess thank you to the fact the casters didn't like the open hand gameplay. It was such a weird situation. And actually, like, truly, no bad blood or anything. Like, Pat and I are super cool about it. It was just like a situation no one had encountered before of like, why are we getting taken off? Like, I thought this was funny. I thought people would enjoy the meme. Anyway, so move on. Just beat Alexi. That felt really good. We play the next round, and it is against a Briar. And this matchup is like doomed. Very impossible to win this unless, once again, you just draw sequence the hell out of them. But I didn't. And this was also on stream, and I just completely threw away the game. I made such a stupid mistake of basically, they had a Force of Nature channel mount, heroic turn, and I had to hope and pray that he didn't draw an attack off of his like E-strike, whatever the last attack was. Because if he drew an attack and snaps, then I would be forced to actually block and be unable to keep my Blood Rush hand. And my Blood Rush hand was like the only way I could potentially win. Because I would be out of life to tank another Blood Rush hand. What was dumb about me, though, about that decision, was he had actually revealed the top of his deck to a Ravenous Rabble earlier in the turn, and it was the Ravenous Rabble had revealed a Lightning Surge. So if I just tracked everything, I actually knew that he would draw an attack off of the Force of Nature draw. So that was just my bad. I gambled into a situation that was actually not a gamble because I should have known what the top of the deck was. So the same thing happens though. Like if I just block and don't let him draw, I lose because I was already down so low that I couldn't keep another Blood Rush hand, and like that would just kind of be it. So that was unfortunate, but it was I'm at that point I'm already locked for top 8, right? So then we go into the next game, and it is against an Oldhim. And this was like a pure fatigue Oldhim. Pure fatigue. So this should be like a free win for me. But for the first time ever, I sat down and had a long think about how to like metagame the situation, right? How do I metagame the best way for me to like be in a top 8 cut where I actually win? So I thought about it. I talked to my opponent, I talked to Charles, talked to some other people who were like in the cut, and I decided that I would concede this match because if I won, I would be 2nd seed, and 2nd seed would put me against some of the spots that were still in contention. 7th and 8th, we didn't know what those decks were going to be, and it was a higher likelihood that that's like a Lexi or a Viserai or something that I don't want to face. So I decided to concede, because if I conceded, then I would go down to like 4th or 5th, and that would be more of like the Oldhim bracket, where there were a bunch of Oldhims at the top table. So this was the first time I've ever tried to make a like decision like that, because normally I just like, I'm playing for fun. Like if I can win the game, like I'm going to win the game. So I felt like this was like a mega brain play. I've never made a play like that before, where you actually make decisions about like how to affect your top 8 standings. So I conceded, and I got to take a break. And then sure enough, my top 8 was then a rematch against, or not a rematch from this day, but a rematch from day 2 against Charles Dunn on Oldhim. I just played him before here, and it was a very close game that came down to pitch stacking the win, right? So I figured he must have made some kind of like strategic change, because if he just plays the exact same way that we played yesterday, I would just win, right? And that's obviously not what he wants. He was still playing for the invite. So this game was so interesting because he played it basically as aggro as he could, right? Closer to how Pat Eschke played the matchup at Pro Tour against me, actually, where even if I'm intiming cards away, he's going to just take damage, because if his hand can do anything more than hammer, like he's just going to do it. Just going to like force throw these things at me, because those turns, like even when he presents like a 3-card 8 damage is only something I can present off of Swing Big, which is a 3 of. So it's an interesting trade, but he went for it, and I think that's actually the right way to play into the Rhinar matchup, because if all you're doing is Titans Fisting, like trying to defend as much as you can Titans Fisting, then that just gives Rhinar like all the time in the world. So it was such a high pressure situation. The game was insane. We had everyone, we weren't on coverage, but we had everybody watching us. It was one of the best games of Flesh and Blood I have ever goddamn played. And I did win. And it came down to such an amazing situation where he was trying to stop attacking and find heart so that he could get out of reckless swing range, but he made one mistake where I was actually able to tactfully go down to 1 and turn off his Heart of Fyendel. So then his outs to reckless were completely gone. So it became just him trying to do anything he could to just not lose to reckless, but also still win because I was at 1, right? So a lot of interesting stuff happened. The game slowed down a ton, and he tried to wait for like Terrace Underhands while I tried to wait for like bigger Intim hands. But in the end, Reckless Swing did get there. So it was just like such a good game. I loved playing that game with Charles Dunn. He's such a masterful opponent. And that put me at 2-0 against him on the weekend, just by the way. World-class player, absolute world-class player. Then the next game was against the same Dash that I had played now twice. I'd played them day 1 here, round 1, and lost to the Blood Rush Beast Within Banish. That I'd won against here when I went full fatigue. We're going to go over the stream in a second, actually. We'll get there. I know I ramble. So my thinking was, my opponent has now seen both ways that I have tried to play this game. I tried to play it aggro, and I lost. I tried to play it full fatigue, and I lost. So now, how do I play this matchup? Because he's playing to win. Like, this guy had a great bracket ahead of him. We'd both be playing against an Oldhim no matter what, because the other top 4 match was an Oldhim mirror, and we both wanted to play the Oldhim, because we should both win that match. So this was high stakes. And this was on stream, and I think it was one of the best stream games I've ever been a part of. There were so many bests from this weekend, but we're going to go over this game in particular today, because it was one of the most unorthodox Rhinar play patterns I've ever pulled off, and it confused my opponent as well. It confused the casters as well, and yet it ended up with a win. No, I did not full fatigue them. No, I did not go full aggro. I played just opportune mid-range into him, and it was just like such a good game. I'm like, it was a good weekend, you know, but it feels even better when I'm not just like sticking to a stock standard way to play. Like, this game was different, and now this game was different. Because part of the way you need to strategize to win an event is to not be predictable. You can't just do what the deck is supposed to do. You as a player need to improvise. So then it put me in the finals. The tournament located, it was in Buffalo, New York, at Western New York Gaming. So I'm in Geneva. It was like a 2-hour drive for me. It's pretty close. Congrats on the win, Ethan. You managed top 8 with Levia this weekend. Turbo Zale took you out in top 8. What's up, Ian? Dude, that's awesome. I don't think I've heard of Levia getting their Nats invite yet, but you can do it, Ian. If anyone can do it, it is you. Yeah, so then that put me in the finals. Make some room here. It put me in the finals against Oldhim, and funny enough, this player on Oldhim is another very good friend of mine, Ian, and Ian had just been in the finals yesterday at this RtN, and he lost to the Lexi. Part of what was going on, though, at this event, part of the reason that it was like so special, wasn't just like the Realm 1 game 1K thing, but like this whole idea of battle at Lake Frigid. There was actually a giant trophy. I don't have a picture of it, but like a giant, maybe like 2-foot tall trophy of a golden Oldhim. And the deal was, like, if you won, then you'd get your name engraved on the trophy, and every year when they do this kind of like battle at Lake Frigid event, they would just accumulate all these names. So my opponent, Ian, really, really wanted his name on the trophy because it was a Goldhim, a golden Oldhim. So he really wanted that. Now, me personally, I have no interest in getting my name on a golden Oldhim. If anything, that sounds like a little bit icky. So I didn't want that to happen. The deal was that was reserved for the winner, though. So we came to an agreement where I would concede on paper because that was the only way for him to actually get his name on the statue. And then we'd play the game for like the prizing and all that. So, or the bragging rights and all that. And I would get first place prizing. So technically on paper, I did concede because I didn't want to gatekeep him from getting his name on the trophy. I didn't want to be a dick, honestly, was kind of the deal. Because what do I want my name on a golden Oldhim for? Oh my god, that scared me. So we played the game on stream anyway, And I did win, and it was like the most high roll game you've ever seen. Like, insane high roll game. First cycle was just freaking nuts. So in the end, I believe, like, officially, I actually don't know how it was reported in Gem. I'm not sure. But officially, maybe I didn't get Rhinar LL points. I'm not quite sure. But I did win the whole thing. I got the first place. I got all the first place prizing. The reason I had to concede was because he wanted his name on the trophy, and I didn't want my name on the trophy. So it was basically a gesture of goodwill towards Ian, because if I'm being like cutthroat about it, there's no way I take any kind of deal on that matchup. That matchup is like free as can be, right? Ian's my friend, so it was a way to help him out. So anyway, yeah, we won the whole thing. We won the whole thing. And look at that track record across both days. That is some spicy variety. It is. Saw so many heroes in the room. Definitely lost some matchups where I heavily expected to. Definitely lost some matchups where I heavily expected to win. Definitely got heavily unlucky. Definitely got heavily, like, really lucky at other times too. It was just a really good weekend for Flesh and Blood. Like, God, I love this game, you know? And so many of these games were just, like, limit testing to the extreme. When you get to play good Flesh and Blood against really quality players, and you're on a deck that, like, should be able to answer what they're doing, but they're on a deck that can try to counter answer what you're doing, and it's truly a back and forth game, and you tactfully are getting to certain life thresholds to deny things from your opponent, and pitch stacking, and on and on. I live for that kind of Flesh and Blood gameplay, and I feel like every one of my wins was closer to that playstyle than any kind of just like high roll Rhinar playstyle. And if we take a look at the list, that's kind of like very much reflected in like in this list. Where is it? Cards. Let me pull up this, and then let me look at chat real quick. Cool move. That's the mark of a player that's been there before and understands what it all means. Yeah, hey man. Okay, hold up a second. To be fair, if the trophy was a Rhinar or a Levia or anything more generic, I would not take that deal. Like, I want my name on that, but an Oldhim trophy, like, literally zero interest, so it is what it is. Wouldn't it be amazing for a root player being the last guy to have the name there before Oldhim LLs? Yeah, that's interesting, you know, because it is the trophy that will be used year after year for all these events. So, that would be kind of funny. But I guess I'll have another shot at it. I have to ask, you and Pat were playing face up during Sunday's game. I'm so curious why, because no one knew. Oh, Azrith, I just talked about this. So that was a very strange situation, and maybe you can just click back to find it. But long story short, that matchup is so inherently bad for Rhinar that I talked to Pat. I mean, we're friends. That would you like, for the entertainment of the stream, to play face up? Because that can add something for the viewers. We thought it would be more engaging for the viewers if we played face up, because otherwise you couldn't see our hands because there were no hand cameras on the stream. We decided, sure, why not? Like, this is just a draw sequence type of game. It is what it is. So we played face up, and we were trying to make it interesting for the stream, but they took us off of coverage because I guess no one liked that. So that was kind of really awkward, because all of a sudden we had to pivot into playing a real game where we had both kind of decided the game was a meme because it's just like draw sequence. So that kind of made things very awkward, not gonna lie. Yeah, it was a strange situation. Anyway, we've got the list on screen here, and this is what I played to 12-4 across the weekend, what I won the RtN with. As you can see, I don't think it's anything too special. It is mostly kind of like stock Rhinar. I took mainly inspiration from Savage Land News with like the sideboard stuff, because like he specifically was running like, you know, some sigils here, like the remembrance, the reinforced lines, like all that just made sense. But like the core itself, I think is just kind of a very generic, like from day one type of Rhinar core. The only difference maybe is like I'm running Savage Feast in a blue slot instead of maybe like Pack Hunt or I don't know what other blue, like Sand Sketch Plan. And the reason for the blue Savage Feast was two reasons. Number one, reinforce the line. when I'm taking that in versus Azalea, if I can block with Blue Savage Feast and pump it, reinforce the line, like sure, that's cool. You can also use this against Dromai to try to have a wide dragon clearing turn where you roll scabs, you hit, you can send Blue Savage Feast into Maragai, and then Claw and clear other parts of the board, and it only costs you, 1/6, the one you discard, right? So the idea there being in one 4-card hand, you can pop with a card, still have 3 cards left, play out the Savage Feast, pitching a blue, discarding a 6, and clear basically 4 permanents with one 4-card hand. 4 permanents with one 4-card hand, because you're popping, you're Savage Feasting, and you're clawing twice. So that was the idea behind Blue Savage Feast, but it didn't actually come up because my Scabskins got Tumultide on turn 2. So it is what it is. But yeah, I don't think the list was like anything special. The one thing I'll note about like the sideboarding and all that, as we can drop the links in the description, but I'll drop it here as well. One of the things I was doing specifically against Oldhim, which I've had some people ask questions about, is I really had a high red count into the Oldhim matchup. And this was actually intentional. I boarded out some of the blues, like the 2 extra Savage Feasts, because in an Oldhim game, I actually want to save reds into second cycle. So I want higher concentration of reds so that when I'm playing like the Sinks and the Fates, I can send more reds to the bottom there and still have like higher threat density first cycle. I can also make more sacrifices like pitching in reds to pay for something that's like, let's say a Smash Instinct, I can pitch like a yellow and a red. So I can more easily set up a stronger second cycle because my hands won't be so filled with like junk blues. Because a lot of the time, if Oldhim is only attacking you with hammer and you have like 2 junk blues in your hand, that's bad. Like you don't want to just fill your deck with a bunch of junk blues. So that was the idea. A little bit different, I think, than I've seen a lot of other Rhinar's board maybe. But I've got to say the most impressive part of how this list played was the mind game between Pummel, Sigil, and Remembrance. Having these as one-ofs was just such an impressive feat of like bluffing, because if your opponent sees Sigil first before the Pummel, I don't take them in every matchup, but if your opponent sees Sigil first before the Pummel, then they're less likely to play around Pummel hands, because they think if you're keeping like an awkward hand to throw into your opponent, that last card must just be a Sigil, right? If they see the Pummel first, then they're more likely to respect Pummel anytime you've got like one floating and Tunic up, but you can falsely represent it with things like Sigil and Remembrance. Try to make it clear as day that you have the Pummel, so they try to play around it, but then you actually Sigil or Remembrance. It was an amazing, amazing little trifecta of mind game cards here. It almost didn't matter like which sequence you saw them in, because that's not intentional. That's just like first cycle shenanigans, right? But the fact that, seeing one kind of change how they played around the other was really interesting. And I didn't want to up the counts on those because of the inherent inconsistencies in Rhinar. I hated inconsistent Rhinar hands. Like I want my Rhinar hands to either return like a Smash Instinct, a Swing Big, a CNC, or if I really need to, like a Pack Hunt. And at any other point, just try to set up Blood Rush hands and arsenal cards that I'm looking for, either like the Massacre, the Savage Feast, or if it's a different phase of the game, maybe the Barragings for Alpha Rampage, that kind of deal. So yeah, it was just like a really solid list. I actually wouldn't change a single card. I think the list played incredibly well, like incredibly well. I didn't see any wizards, so I guess maybe some of this stuff is subject to change, like some of the equipment I played. But no, I would not change a single card in this list. I thought it played perfectly. 0 problems with the deck. The only time the deck really screwed me was when Beast Within banished 2 Blood Rushes, but like, that's just a Rhinar problem. Just that can happen, same as like a double 1 type scenario. So yeah, between like not really building the deck to roll scab skins, between like not really building the deck to have a lot of feels bad with like the draw discards with pulping or wild ride, that just makes you have a better experience overall with a Rhinar run, because there's just less feel bad moments, I think. So yeah, just super solid, really happy with it. Really, really happy with it. Definitely happiest that I put these back in, because I was kind of teetering on whether or not I wanted to run that all you got. But let's take a look now at the games, because some of these were on stream. Wait, is this... Where do I have them? It must be a different tab. Ah, it is a different tab. different tab. Okay, so check this out. We've got a couple games we could look at here, and let's actually leave it to you in the poll real quick to see what you want to go over. I don't know if we have like time for all of it, right? So let's choose. Let's choose in the chat. Start a poll. Which VOD? I'll drop a link so you can watch any of them. But we've got top 8 Dromai. We've got top 4. Top 4 was Dash. And finals was Oldhim. So here, you can vote real quick on what you'd rather review. I think we probably have time to review too, but just in case we don't, want to make sure we do what the people want. Top 4 Dash, getting votes right out the gate. I do think that one's probably the... As a spectator, maybe the top 8 Dash isn't the most interesting, but it was the most interesting to play because I was constantly making like the decision of mid-range turn, defensive turn, or you know, like full fatigue turn or like mid-range turn, like on and off. Really interesting game to actually like play in person. The Dromai game, there's a lot of mistakes, I think. That'd be an interesting one to see. And then we've got the finals on Oldhim, which is just like an absolute smacking meme. Like that game was just funny. That was just funny. We'll let it run for like 1 more minute. All right, I think top 4 Dash. Top 4 Dash looking good. Okay, let's do it. Top 4 Dash. Lock it in. Thank you, people. All right, top 4 Dash game. I think I've got it queued up to the right spot. Yeah, audio's off. I've got it like 1.5 speed. So, okay, the backstory on this game. Should I do smaller? No. Yeah, actually, smaller works, because otherwise you can't see the life, right? Yeah, okay. Cool, there we go. Yeah, so this game, really interesting, because this was the 3rd time I'd played against this Dash player, right? I'd played him round 1 of day 1 and lost, playing aggressively. I beat him in Swiss this day, on Sunday, playing full fatigue. And then that kind of put the onus on me to make the right call now, because the Dash has full information of what worked and what didn't. Full fatigue working against the Dash incentivizes him to play like much more conservatively, pitch stack like crazy, which he actually was doing in the game where I did full fatigue him. It just didn't quite work out. So I was a little worried about going full fatigue from the get-go, because that would put me in a position of just basically saying, it's on you to lose. If I just do nothing but block out, then I'm really just saying, if you misplay and you manage your resources poorly, then you will lose. Because I'm not really going to interact with you. And my opponent was just a little too good for me to let that be the game plan. My opponent, very good player, Chris, out of Toronto. So my game plan instead pivoted towards a more opportunistic mid-range. And the difference being, in a full fatigue strat, you can actually make the choice to literally never swing. Like, never let them get value off of the Crown of Providence even, if they try to get greedy and like stick something in Arsenal that's not working. If you swing literally at all, that can benefit them, because they can crown and like try to find a better hand, right? Like enable a full 5 cards. So that's the difference from the get-go between like full fatigue and like a more opportunistic mid-range. So I made the choice then that we were kind of going to try to play that game this way, but I'd leave it a little bit open in case something changed with draw sequence that was just like a little wacky or something. So the game kicked off there and I was higher seed, so I chose to go first, since at the end of the day, it is more likely that I would end up fatiguing. I chose to go first and tried to just get them to block with cards. And my opponent did play into it. I led with a barraging, and even if I had a full Alpha Rampage hand, like, I don't think I'd want to intimidate too many cards, because I want to actually get them to block. So coming in with just like the Barraging Claw made a lot of sense there. They give me 2 cards. They don't want to cheat damage, because in his mind, he doesn't know if I'm playing full aggro or not yet, because I'd already played full aggro against him a different day. So really good, really big mind games, right? This is what you got to do in a best of 3 type situation when you played the same player so many times. So sure enough, this was actually a little bit intentional, not gonna lie. I feigned the Blood Rush, where I was like, almost gonna block with a Blood Rush, but then didn't, because I actually wanted to get him to Teklo Core there, little mind games. I wanted to try to get him to Teklo Core thinking that I was trying to still play aggressive because I didn't block with the Blood Rush. Like I held it back. I showed him I had it, but I held it back. Mind games, right? But my opponent doesn't. He doesn't feed into Teklo Core. He just has like a different, decent kind of turn, right? So instead, my hand does scale really well because I can fall back on a 2-card hand, which I couldn't have really blocked anymore anyway because the payload had Dominate, and I just Arc Smash, go forward. Honestly, super lucky I had Arc Smash there because it was just like the perfect time. Like the perfect time to have Arc Smash was that hand, and I did have it. So from here, I feel a lot better about the early game because now he's only gotten one use out of Induction Chamber instead of anything more to try to catapult the value of, you know, in a fatigue style strategy, being able to lead with pistol, give it go again, and then still end the chain with pistol. That leaks a lot of damage that you don't want to worry about. So getting induction gone, obviously really massive. But this is just the start of, I would think you agree, it's already like a pretty interesting game when you add this layer of like metagaming commentary and how complicated this game was for me. I really freaking enjoyed it, man. That Oldhim game was insane to watch. Oh, Sam, dude, didn't even notice you're here. Dude, yeah, that was awesome. I channeled all my luck into that last game. But honestly, didn't need it. That matchup for this list, like if you want to just cakewalk the Oldhims, play this version of Rhinar. I think it's almost impossible for you to lose. Truly, like if I had played this version of Rhinar at the Pro Tour, not saying I would have made top 8, but I would have made top 16 because I wouldn't have lost that last Oldhim game against Pat. The list was not really built to play all around Blood Rush like this version is, right? So anyway, move forward. You can already see my opponent is playing slower, right? This is the kind of hand where he's taking a setup turn. He's just going to drop some items and kind of give me room. One of the interesting things about deciding on my end that I'm actually trying to play these aggressive hands, or not aggressive hands, but like kind of this mid-range game is I don't want to not attack. If I'm truly pure fatiguing, I actually want that crown value to come in, right? But excuse me, but now I am incentivized. Okay, the room is there. Let's see if I can actually attack and land something meaningful. So when my opponent plays slower because he's afraid of the fatigue, I'm actually going to play a little bit more aggressive because I know that my strategy is more flexible than full fatigue. Unfortunately, this hand isn't the most interesting to be able to do that. So I do roll scabs and hit a 6. Now, this is like a massive because all I was rolling scabs for was to be able to smash Instinct Claw. All I wanted to do was smash Instinct Claw because that is 3 more damage than I could otherwise represent with the hand. And I want to keep, you know, like I said, my mid-range play lines open. However, I roll a 6 and you're about to see the literal power of a random Rhinar 6 when you have so many blues in your list. Because the curve of like claw into a 2-cost is nuts. Like nuts. You know, you're looking at a 3-card 12 at that point. 4 damage per card. Already a rarity for Rhinar. So, not gonna lie, that 6 was like pretty damn lucky. Congrats on the win. Sorry to hear about that loss to Briar. Must have been a pretty good player. Hey, I talked you up, Ethan. This is the Briar player in the chat, by the way. We did a tournament run. I talked you up, man. I said how good you are. Don't worry. And I admitted fault about the Ravenous Rabble play. I'm not putting that on you, man. That was on me. In hindsight, absolutely on me. Okay. So we can see here my opponent, huge misplay. They block with Crown early. And this is actually why in a full fatigue strategy, you don't attack. Because my opponent crowned for a better hand. And if they're trying to play full aggro and want to try to like, you know, push over the amount of damage that you can block, they will play greedy with crown because they want to just maximize their hands. They don't want to, you know, boost for a blue card, right? That's bad value. So my opponent does crown, which if I was on full fatigue, huge misplay. But we're staying more fluid than that, and we can actually punish by going claw, CNC. It was like actually nuts. Nuts how this lined up. Nuts. But props to Chris, because he's inversely taking advantage of the fact that I might still be like full fatigue, and this is just like a random turn where I am misplaying by attacking, right? So I don't think he like did anything wrong. It's just insane that I had the punish with the CNC there. So already I'm loving the choices that I've like gone down this game, because it might only be like turn 2, whatever, turn 2, turn 3, but it is already a deeply different game than I played the first time I played this guy, a deeply different game than the second time I played this guy. And now we're playing a game where he is obviously playing as if I'm a fatigue Rhinar, and we're not. We're not quite, but we could be. Because you could always hit that point in the game of, okay, I made him block with so many cards that now if I start full fatiguing, we could just win through that way. Very interesting game. I really enjoyed this. And hopefully I'm not just talking it up and it actually is interesting to learn from as well. Rhinar versus Dash is like a pretty classic matchup, but Dash has gotten a lot more toys recently that Rhinar has not. So, like, how does that line up, right? When Dash has things like Pulse Wave Harpoon and Rhinar has, like, Swing Big. I guess Swing Big, I do think Swing Big's... can you really compare the two? Is one better than the other? They're drastically different. Let's say I'm glad that both heroes have those cards, and leave it at that. But yeah, so he's able to, once again, not go super aggro with a lot of boosting this turn off of a singular boost that he needed to kick off the High Octane. He can now play around with the extra action points that he's getting with the ability to now Spark a Genius, draw. I'm just happy, though, that he sparks and doesn't pay into it. Because if he sparks and pays for an induction, that's where I get a little bit worried. Because I think from seeing his list, he was running 2 induction, but I'm not quite sure I'd seen him actually play 2 induction into me. I assumed he would. But because he wasn't paying for it this early, then it made me feel pretty good. And instead, it turns out he just had it in hand, so that kind of answered that question. But in the moment, I was like, oh, thank God he's not running second induction. Turns out he just had it anyway. So well done, opponent. Same deal, though. That was a relatively slow turn for a deck that is trying to boost and aggressively win. So he leaves me with a hand that I'm able to, just kind of luck of the draw, honestly, luck of the draw, have Blood Rush. These are the kind of turns that are now really lining up well. He's given me room, and I was able to Claw CNC. He gave me room, and I'm able to Blood Rush. But these are not hands that I'm going to really fight to keep if he doesn't give me room. The reason he's given me room, once again, is because he thinks I'm trying to full fatigue him. So we're keeping the options open. And this lines up really, really nicely. I took Hardened Crossstrap, not necessarily to enable a Blood Rush turn. The idea with Hardened Crossstrap was more so to enable a 1-card CNC. Anytime he throws like a T-Bone early game, I can just block with the Hardened Crossstrap, not worry too much about it. But then I could also, at some point, after he uses Crown, be able to pop Hardened Crossstrap and return a 1-card CNC. Keep up some like must block type scenarios. So I definitely preferred it over Tunic. I ran Tunic in the other games that we played, but switching to Crossstrap felt really good. Because now, in this kind of unexpected window as well, he has to contend with basically a full power Blood Rush. Because with Crossstrap up, it's very likely that I can pay for whatever attack is left, right? Whatever attack is left. And sure enough, it is a pack hunt. Not the best case. Swing Big would be best case. But we'll take it because this is a turn where I didn't really expect to be able to keep this hand. He just gave me the room. So we come in for the 18 damage Blood Rush. And you can see when this much damage lands, there is a difference in play that kind of continues for the rest of the game. Because if my opponent really eats this down, what you then realize, like if he takes this, right, he goes down to 18. 18 is like 1 more Blood Rush away from winning. 18 is like 2 Swing Bigs, like a Smash Instinct away from winning. It's a threshold that like legitimately has a few enough turns for me to really pressure that I don't have to full fatigue anymore. Because if I can start to get him blocking, then that's just as good, honestly, as trying to just pure fatigue the dash. So this was a really, really important turn to hit. The life threshold means a lot here. The fact that he was able to now kick off this hand, a 4-card hand, with the extra Techlicore resources is a little bit scary, but I'm willing to definitely trade like the power turn I had to once again play like a purely defensive turn. Because at this point, the one thing that I could try to stall out for, like truly block everything and stall for, is a second Arc Smash. Because a second Arc Smash killing the induction chamber means I can once again fall on like pure fatigue. So it was interesting. Like the windows are still there. You know, no play line is like necessarily set yet, right? You've got different alterations you can go down. Thought it was very interesting. And I've got a CNC in hand here, and the idea being if my opponent like slows down, shows me damage that is like, you know, break points that are just like not really worth me blocking. Like if it's just all pistols, right, then I don't really want to give a 3-block card on a pistol. So I instead, with this kind of hand, am probably trying to keep the CNC. because we've already committed to more of a mid-range type of play. So he slows down, and this is a huge deal for me. Same reasoning for him, though. He's trying to play around fatigue. So he's going to commit more cards at the end of the turn to just paying into and setting up pistols and slow down for like a 5-card hand where you can really get damage going. I have the punish with a CNC. Not going to lie, like the draw sequence is just really good. The draw sequence here like is just kind of funny because not only was it like the 6 into the CNC, into the Blood Rush, and like another CNC, you know, if these hands didn't do this, the game would probably look a lot different and I'd have to be playing full fatigue. But because I kept both windows open, you know, play patterns like this line up. Leak says, congrats on the win. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, thank you. If you want to click back into earlier parts of the stream, we did the whole story time of the entire win and all the whole roller coaster that was and all the matchups and everything. And yeah, just freaking great weekend. Great weekend. We're watching this at 1.5 speed. I think I'll bump it up to 2 because there are some like slower turns. Let's bump it up to 2 times speed to try to get through it some. But this is the problem, right? Like if the dash is slowing down, but their game plan is still to aggressively win the game, you know, win before they deck out, then committing cards to blocking a CNC is a really big deal for them. I'm taking 2 cards out. I'm slowing down the 5-card hand that they tried to set up, right? And effectively taking cards out in a way that benefits me as well, because it's less cards that I have to block. So the one like inverse of that is by him not taking the damage and just losing arsenal, then I need to reconsider the play lines I'm trying to keep open of, okay, now he's at 12. I need to fight for one more Blood Rush hand. So there's like a lot still going on in consideration here. But my opponent, he was really upset about that play in particular because he misblocked, I believe, and gave up 2 boost cards where he, in the end, wanted to keep 1. So this was, once again, just like a little bit of a, I guess, fortunate blunder. To be fair, like it's an awkward state of pressure because this has not been the style of game that we've played yet. So yes, it was a misplay, but we could also chalk it up to the fact that like I'm trying to just play it in a different manner where he was not expecting. So yeah, because I think he blocked with like a yellow zipper hit and like a red high-speed impact or something, and he'd meant to keep one of those and instead block with like the max or the magnetic shockwave, something along those lines. We talked about it after, because the Teklo core just meant that he'd have enough resources to like make the play he wanted. Yeah, because in this case he like floats 2 resources, right? So this was like the slight inefficiency that he had talked about after. So I believe he misses in the end like 2 points of damage is really the difference. But he sets up the max V, and this is scary. Like on my end, I don't know it's a max V, but because he played out the T-bone, I can start to reason, okay, this is because he wants like a better setup in Arsenal. If he plays out something like the T-bone right there, then that means he probably wants to replace Arsenal with max velocity. Otherwise, you would keep the T-bone in Arsenal and just wait for your hand where you naturally draw max velocity and have a guaranteed boost card to try to make that chain work. So I have a pretty decent read that it is max V now. The problem is all my CNCs are gone, I believe, because I blocked with 1, I played 1. No, I played 2 and I blocked with 1. So I can no longer actually interact with the fact that that is max velocity. So once again, game plan switches a little bit. Have to now commit to the fact that if my opponent is given all the room in the world, he's actually got big turns brewing, and I need to respect that, because yes, I have high life, but he also hasn't boosted that much. The entirety of the game, he's boosted maybe like 4 or 5 times, something like that. So, yeah, instead, this turn goes like a little sideways from what I was expecting, because he gets a Pulse Wave off and is able to pull the Arg Smash. Because after seeing him set up like that, my game plan once again was, okay, maybe we do break induction. You know, it's always flipping decisions. But he pulls the Arg Smash. So then I have to change my game plan again of, oh my god, I can't break the induction chamber. Now things are changing. I'm going to have to make the call of, you know, do I commit these cards in hand to blocking 6? Or, because he's on 11, actually throw this hand back at him? Very interesting position, but because he pulled the Arg Smash, I basically was forced to play a bit more aggressive, because I can no longer outlast the fact that he can turn 1 card into 4 damage consistently with the induction chamber and just kind of like whittle me down. So I eat it. I eat the Goliath Gauntlet max velocity to return the swing big. Because at the end of the day, like if he blocks with 2 cards, gives me the Teklo, and then his turn is just 2 cards with no arsenal, I have room, and I can try to just like rip a Blood Rush off the top, like something, right? Or if he takes it, he's down to 3. And then like, what does that mean? That's a huge freaking deal. Now, the one thing that was in play that he didn't know about, and if you look at the sideboard guide, it is now kind of public, I guess. Not like it was a big deal, but into Dash, I actually don't run the Reckless Swings. Oh, Chris, you're here. Just saw the stream going. Watched it back a few times last night. You're definitely in the driver's seat through that match. Seeing your hands, you played it great. Earned it. Oh, dude, I've been hyping you up all stream so far, saying like how fun our games were, because I got the pleasure to play 3 freaking times, my friend. But yeah, this game is really interesting for me to look back on as well. It definitely got lucky. The draw sequence for me in the early turns was like close to perfect. But there's a lot of like pivots in decision making that I think were a bit more nuanced, let's say. But yeah, so like same deal here. This is a turn where I'm not gonna like force a bad Blood Rush. The fact that Swing Big alone, presenting 8, is huge. Little bit of an awkward spot though, because giving up the Blood Rush means I don't have a Blood Rush in first cycle anymore, because I'd blocked with one. Or no. Oh no, there was one left. Because I did the feign block. with the Blood Rush. I didn't actually block with it. So there is still one Blood Rush left. Yeah, that's what happened there. Yeah, honestly, great matches. Loving the breakdown and thoughts on it. I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Obviously there was like the Teklo core misplay, but I'm not a super experienced Dash, so I can't really like comment on your side of it too well. But I can definitely see, where some lines that you took were just absolutely insanely good if I was trying for the full fatigue strat. So that was kind of the reason we played it a bit different, right? Like, can't just do that, because you can obviously play that version of the matchup really well. You're given all the room in the world. Shapeshifter specialization just got revealed. Oh my god. Okay, we'll check that after this VOD review. I had no idea that was even coming. What the heck? Is this the Daniel Correa's list? The push the point? What list did he build? What did he build? Dash or Rhinar or something? I have no idea. But from my end, no. This is my own Rhinar build. You have inspired me to play Rhinar. No problem, Fab Nordic. It's a really fun deck. I think this version of the list is the least feel-bad version of Rhinar you can play. It feels very, very fair. And if your opponents die to some of your bigger Intim stuff, then, like, in all honesty, not like they deserve it or anything, but, like, that's the one thing your deck is doing. So if they lose to, like, the one thing your deck is doing, then they are probably playing the game a bit awkwardly. That's all I'm saying. Because I have 3 cards in the deck that are just like I win cards. And for the most part, you don't just draw them in sequence. I think I only had like one game where I truly just ripped Blood Rush into Blood Rush into Blood Rush. I don't want to play Rhinar that way. I'd rather the slow burn style. So this was an important part as well. I think I kind of missed the attack that forced Chris to 4. But one of the things that was starting to come up was his fear of my Reckless Swing. If I had Reckless Swing, he just can't go to 2, because then no matter what game plan he's trying to execute, he just loses. He doesn't have any life gain. So that's the importance of pushing to this life threshold, is now, even if I return a 6, then he has to give me 2 cards, in theory. Because if he gives me 1 card, he goes to 1 and just dies to Reckless. So pushing him down to these life thresholds, really, really important. And you could kind of see mid-game where I gave up life to make this happen. At this point, though, he does still have to pressure me and kill me, and 13 is not unreasonable because he still had 1 max velocity turn left. So that's what I'm like worried about, kind of on the side. This is the kind of turn that to me looked like really could have been a max V turn, because he's got a boost going. If it's like 1 more boost, 0 cost, then he can Teklo core and max V, right? So it's not out of the question that I'll have to just fully block. And kind of give up the fact that I want to keep a 2-card hand now, even if it's just 6 damage. 13 is pretty healthy, though. Idea being, like, if he goes for the max velocity, then he's committing another 3 cards burned to the boost. 3 cards burned to the boost. Let's assume that the 0 cost is probably like a yellow T-bone or something, because he's burned through... I don't think he had any red 0 to 60s left. So I'd be facing, like, 2 damage from the 0 cost boost, and then 10 damage from the max V. And I could just full block with my hand for 9 against the max V and only take 3 damage this turn. And that would be the end of his damage, basically. That could be all he could do. Because this is his last max V. He played 1 and he boosted 1. So if he went for the max V turn here, and I full block it, I would live at 10, and there's no way at that point he can win. There's no way. Even with just the pistol play, I'll be able to outvalue that because the deck really is getting low now, and the fact that he would have had to commit an extra 3 cards burned to making it. Because I think, actually, I say this, I don't even remember this is the actual situation, but he did just pitch a yellow T-bone, right? He just pitched a yellow T-bone. And in Arsenal, he does have a max velocity, just by the way. He does. So the difference in what happened here is he instead went for the high octane play to preserve 1 more card in deck, and instead spread his damage across, I believe, like 8 pistols, or 8 pistol damage. So he valued keeping the max V for like 1 more push turn to push me lower, and like make that the threatening kill turn, right? Unlucky for him, though, is the hand I'm able to keep is really demanding answers at this point because of how low he is. It's a very strange game. Like, it's developing on a different axis than I think most Rhinar games. And it'd be interesting to see if like an experienced Rhinar just told me straight up that like you shouldn't play the game this way, you should just full fatigue, whatever. I really enjoyed playing the game to this degree. I thought it was a much more interesting match. And not gonna lie, part of the reason that I wasn't full fatiguing wasn't just because I respected the hell out of like how Chris could play that match, but also because we were on coverage, and we were on purpose put on coverage because we were supposed to be the entertaining match. The other match was an Oldhim mirror, so I didn't want to just be full blocking. Like, that is just not entertaining. And at the end of the day, like, yes, I want to win, but I also really care about the quality of coverage. So there is that. Truly, I'm like not even kidding. That was half of it. Part of giving Chris the quicken token here, though, is that he'll get to shoot 3 times with the pistol. I believe because the first time is off the quicken, and then he can reload it with induction. Or no, he'd be 1 resource short, right? So he can only shoot twice with the pistol. So what I'm counting down here is if it isn't a max V in Arsenal, if it's instead like, you know, a zipper hit or something, I want to make sure my last card in hand gets better value than blocking on the Teklo. So we actually hold the hand, and we don't get punished for it, and just have a full Intim Alpha. Not like he could do anything if my turn was just the Alpha Rampage. Like, we didn't need to actually keep the barraging to win like that. He would just die. Or no, we needed to keep the barraging. We didn't need to keep the clearing bellow, is rather what it was. Yeah, that was a really interesting game. Like a very different dash game than I was expecting to see there. And if you could have seen like the entire breadth of what Chris and my like matches looked like across the weekend, not a single one looked like the other one. Very happy with our games. What is that glove alter? Those are altered to look like Levia's pieces of equipment. So like this is Gambler's, but like that is Levia. And she's rolling like wishing bones. And this is Scabskins standing in like the, I wonder if you can see it early game without the counter. Yeah, this is Scabskins without like the jungle setting, instead kind of like the like sacrificial symbol, whatever Levi's got going on there. But we pivoted to Rhinar, and I only have 1/ofs of those equipment pieces, so we had to use them. A lot of people ask like, oh, what is that? I'm like, guys, you don't remember? Like, I'm a Levia player. Like, what's going on here? But yeah, really, really great game. Let's check out the new revealed spoiler. Because I'm interested in that as well. What is going on here? A shape shifter? Specialization? Revealed by Olivia of the Veil this early? What on earth? This is just out of the blue. This is absolutely out of the blue, people. What did we know this was coming? Oh my god, Shiyana Specialization. Alluring Inducement. 2-cost yellow. Okay. When this attacks, the defending hero reveals their hand. You may choose an attack action card revealed this way. If you do, this becomes the chosen card. Okay, I'm gonna assume becomes like literally copies. Wait, what would it copy? When this attacks, the defending hero reveals their hand. You may choose an attack. Okay, so I would assume it copies the stats and like the on-hit effect of the card, right? I would think. Like, this doesn't have like the little X symbol, like the little asterisk, like the mutated mass, but I think it would change everything, right? Unity. When this defends together with a card from hand, create an eloquence token under any number of heroes' control. Okay, that is an interesting keyword. So it's when you block with 2 cards. This will have a trigger. Do we know eloquence token? Did that also come out? Did it come out? Let me check the Discord. No, Eloquence token is not revealed. But we at least know an Eloquence token is also part of the Dorinthia specialization. Or I guess it's not necessarily a Dorinthia spec, sorry. The Warrior Majestic that Flukenbox is going to spoil soon also has the keyword Unity. So it'll be interesting. Does Unity then always have this trigger, or Unity means just when you defend with another card? And it could have like some other triggered effect. No idea. Wow, exciting stuff though. So this is Shiyana and this is Prism, and Shiyana like is kind of absorbing part of Prism, I guess. The people specking about the art were right. Man, this is awesome. So cool. Shiyana getting legit support. Did not expect that. Swing bigger, Shiyana. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say like add the attack to the base attack or anything. So I would assume, even though it's not an asterisk, this moves to just being worth 8 and gains the text of swing big, like in that kind of situation. Shiyana is going to be one of the prisms on the throne in the narrative, I guess, like Padme's body double. Okay, I don't follow the lore super well, not gonna lie. I was meaning to get deeper into it because Monarch is such like a story-driven set, but honestly, Levi's lore is like a little flat, and it's the lore I know the most, so that's kind of my experience with with Flesh and Blood lore. I'm sure it's really good, but Levi's story just like didn't really intrigue me enough to keep reading more. Levi's story is just sad, just depression. Poor servant girl whose like parents disappear, and she accidentally like makes a blood pact with a demon and then becomes this like messy fleshy thing that like wanders through gardens at the Demonastery and then like just basically becomes like a slave to Plasmafed and teams up with Chain, but it's not really out of her own volition. Like it's just the path she's on. I don't know. Not a lot of agency like in Levi's story, not gonna lie. This is apparently a new card. No, it's a new card. This was revealed by Olivia the Veil. She's the Prism cosplayer from like some of the early callings in Pro Tour. She's big in the Magic world, and I believe she's like married to Brian Kibler or like something to do with Brian Kibler. But she's a big name. The story that got me into the lore as a Dory main was the battle for Morlock Hill. Yeah, I glanced at that one. Like I definitely skimmed it. I didn't like read too much into it. I was just scanning for like a Levia mention, and you kind of get a reference to Levia at one point that like there's just like this demon horde that's like destroying a bunch of things. Yeah, it could be a second version of Shiyana as well. That's not a bad speculation. I do not think an adult Shiyana is coming. I personally don't see that making much sense. She's very much like a UPF first hero, because otherwise, like, how the hell do you deck build Shiyana? Like, I guess you would try to tune her to what you expect to be sitting across from, but like you don't control that, and then you end up like facing like a dash. Like, what do you do? I don't know. I haven't really thought about it. Yeah, a new ability, and we'll get more random discard benching stuff without... Oh, you're talking about something else. What else did you say, Sigma? You got intoxicated by Levi's hybrid aggro build, so you decided to play Feels Bad Rhinar, and ended up winning your first 2 armories ever in 2 straight armories. It's all your fault, Ethan. I don't know what Feels Bad Rhinar is. That's what I think people mistake about me. I'm not actually a Brute player. I'm a Levia player. I played Rhinar legitimately because I thought he would be good. I was metagaming. I was not just playing Brute. I played Rhinar because I legitimately like wanted to beat the Oldhims, and he seemed like the deck that could most easily beat Oldhims, because Oldhims wouldn't tech to beat Rhinar, they would try to tech to beat Lexi, right? So I didn't jump ship just because he's a Brute. I like legitimately wanted to play him for meta-dependent reasons. I'm still a Levia player, first and foremost, so I don't really know much about what's going on in like the Rhinar world. I know what the Cheetah package is, at least. I'm familiar with that lingo. Shapeshifter being able to choose a class plus specialization of their choice to build with instead of 100% flexibility would be cool. That'd be interesting. Yeah, you could go into it with a bit more agency over like what your synergy piece is going to be for that game. But then like there's probably some combos there that feel pretty bad. I really have never played Shiyana, thought about it much. But here, let me go into the finals here, because this one is like a really, really funny game, and it doesn't last very long, and I think most people didn't see it. So shout out, by the way, to Flake. Flake and a local Tannin were casting, not Tannin Grace, a different Tannin. We're actually casting both days. It was a slog for them. I do know that. Really, really long days of coverage. But they did it, and props to them. And thank you for hosting once again to Western New York Gaming. But check this out. This was the finals then. We'll jump into it. Of the Oldhim versus Rhinar. It was me on the right versus Ian on the left. And oops, I think we missed part of the game. Let me scoot back. So he was higher seed. So he was able to choose first or second. And he chose basically what would disadvantage me more. So he chose to go first because he didn't want me to just like land free damage, right? So he goes first, and he actually starts with a sigil. So I believe the life is just like not updated correctly yet. But funny enough, like his list is running 3 sigils. So me seeing one like super early, I don't really mind because I don't want him to be playing around with like a sigil when it could be a pummel later or things like that. So I don't mind the fact that he starts a bit early. It's fine. Like we move past it. It's a resource that we have to count down anyway because normally with this matchup, my game plan is a second cycle type of game. Now, my draws did end up being just like kind of insane. So the game plays out much differently than I was expecting. But we already had like a bit of a window going second to just land some free damage because there wasn't a good arsenal in that hand anyway. We did hit, so I was able to throw 2 attacks. Then Ian comes in with a CNC like directly on turn 3 with Tunic up. Is it a pummel? Like, just did he line it up perfectly, draw sequence? Yes, he did. I did play around this a little bit because, of course, you crown first, and then I had one card I didn't, like one non-6 in this hand of an otherwise Blood Rush turn. So no matter what crown drew, if it actually was a pummel, even if I drew like another non-6, then I could just discard it and play my Blood Rush turn anyway. So we very much appreciated how that worked out, because if he didn't pummel, then I was a little bit screwed because I would have just kind of wasted a card of value, just inting something away. I guess it's not the worst, but we did draw into a really strong Blood Rush turn here with basically the entire curve we want. We don't even need to use Tunic because we have the cards in hand to be able to pitch blue to Mandible Claw and then Savage Feast. So the thing I'm waffling on here is, do I want just more guaranteed damage in Alpha Rampage right now, but at a little bit worse rate? Because if I play the Alpha, I miss out on the Claw, but I get double Intim at this point and would then push 11. So if I instead just lead with Claw into Savage Feast, I'll only get 1 Intim. So in theory, you know, be able to be blocked a little bit more. I actually don't know if that line of thinking is correct because an extra claw in there is worth a lot. So yeah, I think Alpha Rampage is never right there anyway, so I'm glad I didn't make that play. But then we draw into a Blood Rush hand right off the back of an already big Blood Rush hand that Ian actually blocked out. I didn't full Intim his hand away, so he was able to block with a lot, and then his turn basically did nothing, and then I leaded right into a Blood Rush turn. And this is pretty funny because the Blood Rush draws into a Beast Within and a blue, and I have an Alpha Rampage in Arsenal from the Savage Feast draw. So I roll Scabskins here, and the line opens up. I hit a 5, so I get 2 action points, where I can Alpha Rampage right now, discard the Beast Within, draw, Intim 2 more cards, make sure that I get the barraging beatdown buff through, and still have the action point and resources for 2 claws after this. So literally, like, out of nowhere, I land 25 damage. Like, out of nowhere. This is like turn 4, you know? Like, it was just really funny. You know, draw sequence-wise, like, I don't really know you beat this. I don't know if, like, anyone beats this. Especially not if they had just tanked, like, the last Blood Rush turn. If they were, like, any kind of aggro deck, they would have just tanked it, and then I would have had this turn, and they would have just straight lost. So, you know, props to Ian, because he's able to survive just the insane draw sequence that was. But I feel so in control here. I mean, I still have 1 more Blood Rush in the deck, and he's at 7. You know, yes, he has 2 sigils left, but I've also got a Remembrance. Like, the game is just so over, and it's like turn 4. It was so funny. It was so funny. We were just checking the pitch deck there real quick, and then moved on. And at this point, right, like, he was forced to keep this hand, so I really don't want it to be a good rate hand. It's the potential to it has the potential to be a pummel hand is the one thing, because he's representing 2 floating, but I did just see him pummel a CNC, so pretty convinced he doesn't have it. So we don't, like, really play around it being pummel. I guess the play around would be, you know, I just don't arsenal a card, I guess. But we come in with CNC. And we did have open deck list going into this, so I really do want to play the CNCs, even though they're in theory like, you know, I guess they're like quasi, they are disruption, right? But like, I'm not going to have them backed up by a pummel. So when you make the choice of like, do you want a CNC or do you want to like smash instinct? I think against Rhinar, most of the time I actually do want to just get the intims through, and I'm more likely to end up blocking with command and conquers because they want to keep a like defense react in arsenal anyway, and they also don't mind just like blocking down with 2 cards and Titan's Fist. So kind of a just a choice there though, because we looked at the deck list and Ian specifically was running like, I think it was like 3 staunch, 3 blue staunch, like 2 red staunch, 3 sigil, 3 oasis, and 3 sync. Like he was on a little bit more defense reaction package than I was expecting. So we instead were making some calls to go for CNC instead. Without a pummel behind it, not the most threatening thing, but instead we had a pummel on our pack hunt, which lines up. This really would have gotten punished, of course, if there was the, defense reaction in Arsenal, but we just kind of got lucky that there wasn't. Instead, it was a sigil, and the game moves on. So I'm able to cheat out damage, but he kind of gains it right back with the sigil. I'm just given room now to, once again, kind of threaten a pummel, right? And this is funny because Ian was verbalizing that he thought I had the pummel here, like otherwise I would roll scabs, right? If I didn't have the pummel, then I'd be rolling scabs. That would just make sense. So in his mind, I have pummel here, and I have 2 cards in hand, I have a card in arsenal, like I can definitely pay for it. So even though my deck list had shown I only had 1 pummel, it's the kind of thing you forget because I'm making like a very obviously pummel play, but it's not pummel, it's sigil. So really, really funny. I love when that kind of thing lines up. And this is go again, Endless Winter. There's no big deal. You know, I'm just going to take value turns. Like I'm not going to try to do anything special. Just return the swing bigs, return the smash instincts, and since we know we have 1 more blood rush in the list, basically just wait, you know, get to that blood rush and know that the game is over. We'd seen 2 alpha rampages go, I believe 2 red barragings go, so if I saw 1 alpha or if I saw the 1 barraging, I would want to put that in arsenal and just use that as a win con. So there was a lot still to close out the game, but you'll see a lot of false starts in this game because Ian just wouldn't die for quite a while. He just refused to die. And we rolled scabs, we had the room to, and luckily hit again. So Savage Feast lets us push through extra damage. And it does discard the swing big, which little feels bad. Swing big would have been quite good. But we draw into, or no, I think we already had the Massacre in hand, which is what I was really looking to hit for the extra Intimidate. But with Tunic up and 2 floating, Massacre is really good value right now. You know, it's basically saying I don't need to save it for a Blood Rush turn and hope I draw resources. I can actually get use of it on the back of the Savage Feast turn. So coming in for 8 now and intimidating. I offer the fist bump because I'm like, that's it, like no cards in hand. But he did cycle out when he sigiled and put a new card in arsenal. It was a D-react in arsenal. So he's able to live it now 1 life. Fist bump was a little premature. He did have it, but he loses Tunic. Like the game just feels great, right? Just feels great. He was actually double checking because he thought he was dead. He thought the massacre was 10. I'm like, no, it's just 8. It wasn't a Blood Rush massacre. Don't forget. So we have to play through a couple more different lines still. And this is a little takesies backsies. I almost played the Fate Foreseen, but then realized I have the room now. I think I should just go ahead and stock my deck full of the really good stuff. You know, like another Alpha, another couple Blood Rushes, and then when I Fate with those shuffled back into the deck, I'll have a better chance of like getting what I want on top, right? Like if I don't see a Blood Rush, I can just bottom that card and know that I have 3 Blood Rushes still coming. So you can see the deck's actually pretty thin, even though the game's been going so quick. It's because, you know, the Blood Rushes came through, a lot of cards were spent there. I've been discarding on like the Savage Feast as well, like some pummels came through. I've been discarding a lot. So at this point, yeah, it's just a question of, oh, there we go. Okay, stream, good. I wasn't sure if that was internet or what. This was just me trying to give me best odds to find a hand that just wins the game, because at this point, it's very unlikely that he could really interrupt my plans with a CNC pummel anymore, because he doesn't have Tunic. So for him to keep a CNC pummel hand is to keep 4 cards in hand, which I didn't think was going to happen anymore. So once again, you can see a false start fist bump. I thought I had the Reckless win, and he'd already played 2 sigils, so I'm like, he doesn't have the 3rd sigil, we'll just do it. But he had the 3rd sigil, so Offer the fist bump? Nope, nope. He did have sigils, so he's alive at 2. But now he's completely out of sigils. So basically, if I had Reckless this hand, then he's dead. So this was pretty fortunate as well. Like, I have the Blood Rush hand, but I hadn't blocked with Scabs yet. So when he Cranial Crushes me, I'm able to not get crushed, so I can actually still draw from Blood Rush, and this is pretty much the game. Like, it's what we waited for, right? We shuffled back all the Remembrance Blood Rushes, so this was just exactly what we set up for. We had Tunic up, we had an attack in Arsenal. It was just literally perfect. This was kind of funny, though. We did draw double Blood Rush off the Blood Rush, but we had no 6 in hand, so they weren't actually good. They weren't playable here. It would have been pretty funny to, like, end the game on a true triple Blood Rush, but it's not quite how it works. Instead, we just use them for pitch, we use the Tunic, and we come in with the Smash Instinct at the very end to win the game. So that was a pretty funny game. Like, that's what a Rhinar high roll can look like. But it also, like, for a Oldhim deck, just kind of shows that Oldhim can't disrupt that game plan. Like, yes, I high rolled into that in sequence so early, but that was just a little BS, right? If I'm instead slowing it down and setting up and actually making those hands a bit forced because of pitch stacking, which is what I was doing into all the other Oldhims, there's still just not much interaction that an Oldhim can have in that kind of game. So, yeah, really fun game. The fact that it ended up being that quick was good for everybody, so we could go home right after. So that was it. That was the run. The run on Rhinar. Absolute joy to play in. I had so much fun. So much freaking fun this weekend. And the big news for me, actually, was the fact that this was part of the Realm Games Invitational. So I won the invite to the Realm Games as well. So Realm Games is doing like a 20k invite. A bunch of stores signed up to run these little things, like 1Ks or whatever they were, so that the winner would then be invited to this thing. And I love the Realm game. I love Keith. I love traveling out to Ohio. So I really wanted to win one. I wasn't sure I would. I thought maybe I'd have to end up just trying to work some like coverage aspect for them, or like do something, be a special guest or something. But instead I won. So now I am invited to the Realm Games Invitational. And I will probably play Levia, because it will be after Dusk Till Dawn. So there's a lot to look forward to in the Flesh and Blood world. It is so freaking exciting right now. I hope I proved to everybody that Rhinar actually is like a very decent like meta pick. I'm not a like Rhinar player. I didn't force it because I love Rhinar. I played Rhinar because legitimately I wanted to walk like the right meta. Like, you know, just absolutely breeze through a bunch of Oldhims, Dromais. I really like my gameplay into Azuri as well. I like how I played that matchup. So I specifically like took it for like a meta relevant reason. It wasn't just I'm forcing Rhinar and I'm, you know, upset when he doesn't get support, blah, blah, blah. No, I think he like legitimately has a reason to be played. And as Ali showed as well, Ali made freaking top 8 in the Calling Antwerp, right, with Rhinar. Like, I think Rhinar's doing really well right now. Like, Rhinar's actually showing he's meta relevant. So, yeah, hopefully you all could learn a little something from this and take the list and tweak it how you want. Truly, I wouldn't change a single list. I think the list was perfect. I guess you can tune it a little bit more to like what your meta is looking like. But yeah, the link is in the description. I did add all the matchup tabs, and I think these are pretty accurate. I tried to go through basically everything, but at the end of the day, like I only played against what I played, you know? It's kind of just a lot of theory. But if you look back on this video when I was talking about the deck list and talking through the matchups, and especially the games that were recorded, I think you can learn a lot on how to play it. And at the end of the day, like Rhinar is not... If you're playing Rhinar as a first cycle deck, I actually think he's one of the easiest in the game. If you just first cycle the hell out of Rhinar, then he is incredibly easy. The hands play themselves. But if you play Rhinar as a second cycle deck, he's really nuanced, really intricate, and that is my preferred way to play the hero. And this list is like kind of built for that style. It doesn't have like the draw discard stuff. That is all just trying to high roll first cycle, which is not how I enjoy Brute. Rhinar has good matchups, but you'd worry about the go-wide decks. Not sure how you'd play against them. I just know you had no issue playing against Rhinar when you were on Katsu. Well, that's the problem, right? Like, every deck has bad matchups. Every deck has bad matchups. Rhinar's, like, bad matchup is the go-wide decks, which is, like, the Ninjas. The Lexis are pretty bad, but he's pretty consistent against At least you can build him to be consistent against like the go tall decks, Bravo, Azalea, like even like some kinds of Azuri, right? And then he really should absolutely stomp Dromai and Oldhim if you play him right. And then even the sideboard, right, you can basically ensure the dash matchup as well. So that is like a meta relevant deck. That's a spread that is really unique. And it's why I played him at the Pro Tour. I just think my problem at the Pro Tour was I wanted to try and play to beat Lexi when I should have just played a deck that would beat what I wanted it to and could just maybe get there against Lexi if you got lucky, instead of force it with like a specific strategy, because it's not a matchup you're going to win. I don't think you should really care about winning it, because at the end of the day, like, they just have so much more power in their deck than you do. And if they see it and you don't, like, that's just the game. Like, don't dwell on it. It is what it is. Yeah, you faced 2 Ice Lexis within your first 4 matches back in New Jersey Calling. It's why you main Bravo right now. You know, I was interested to see someone put up a tier list of the supposed like meta post Oldhim, and someone had Bravo in S tier, which color me puzzled. Like, I don't know about that one. I guess we'll see, but I'm not convinced like Bravo is S tier at all. I think he's probably pretty bad, just because he's not the defensive Guardian at all. Like, the matchup spread is so different, and like in theory, according to Kale, like Bravo is supposed to beat Oldhim anyway. So then, like, shouldn't Bravo have already been doing something special now, and like beating what it should beat, and like also beating Oldhim? Like, shouldn't it have a better matchup spread right now because it beats Oldhim? I don't know. I don't see that deck becoming S tier. So if Guardians are on the back burner for a bit, that's fine by me. It's a little bit worse for our friend Rhinar here, but it'll just be a different metagame. It's one I'm really interested to play in. I don't think we can really get any value out of our Jabils in this next format. I have no idea what to do with this card. It's nowhere near as cool as the Extended Art Spring Tunic, but we'll do something. I do play Emperor and Blitz, I guess. Yeah, do you guys think Fi will do a comeback? What's worse, Katsu or Fi? I think Katsu's just better than Fi right now. I don't think it's close, but I guess I'm ready to be proven wrong. Fi is just very tied to like needing blues. You know, when you draw all red hands in Fi, if there's even like a single 1 cost in that hand, like it can be just, I mean, you're just a ninja that like just stops doing ninja things. It's pretty bad. Whereas Katsu, especially with his effect and the amount of like baiting he can do to even make you block with what the Katsu knows is like a bad hand, but you as the opponent like need to respect, just that interaction alone that's demanded can save a lot of the hurdles of like a normal kind of ninja hand that comes up now and again. Yeah, Nervesh in the chat saying Katsu's better than Fi, and he mains Katsu, so I would default to what he knows. Bravo isn't even good in Alexi, at least from what I've seen. Lexi's just out-value Bravo. That's exactly what I've seen too. So actually, Devin, I think I might be a Azuri player, not gonna lie. Like, with Oldhim gone, yes, your Dromai matchup's pretty miserable, but like you said, everything has a bad matchup. I think Azuri looks so good. I really want to play that hero more. Really, really want to play that hero more. I'm just upset that for Pittsburgh, I can't break out Azuri because I just will not play. It's not in me to play a deck that loses to Oldhim. Like, I just do not want to do that at all. So we'll probably play Rhinar next weekend at Pittsburgh and see what happens. Actually, oh, here's something for you. Because we're not actually going to play Talishar games today. I'm going to have to hop off and go to work pretty soon. But here's a question for everybody in the chat. We got the Pittsburgh 5K next weekend. There's a Battle Hardened on Sunday that is limited outsiders. So, like, the Swiss rounds are sealed, and then the top 8 is draft. Right now, I am top 50 limited elo in the world. I'm 29th. I'm convinced I can probably hold on to that to get my Worlds invite. So should I play in something like the Battle Hardened? I don't know enough about like how weighted these things are for elo, but like if I punt the Battle Hardened right, then I just screw my chances of top 50 limited elo. And I've never been in a position where like I don't play an event because of elo, but now I understand what people say about that, where they're disincentivized to play an event because if you scrub, like you actually get impacted. I'm like kind of feeling that now. I don't quite like how that feels because I want to play limited outsiders, but it is sealed for Swiss, so there's the chance that I just have trash. So I guess maybe I sign up and I see how good my deck is, and then I maybe drop. Ugh, it just like, it feels icky. I don't like being a like metagamer like that, but you know, it's what you have to do. Like I do want to go to Worlds, you know. being sealed makes you not want to play. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I don't love it, but I still can't wait to go to Pittsburgh next weekend. So plug to the Realm games. We can at least show that off, I believe. 2023 Invitational season. We have the Pittsburgh Brawl with Green Tree. This is coming up next weekend. A lot of really great people are going to be there. Devin in the chat, Azra Strice going to be there. Pat and Charles, funny enough, can't go. The two Pittsburgh big dogs, they're going to be at a wedding. So I think for once someone else can win because Pat and Charles can't make it. So anyone who can make it out to this, I think it'll be a ton of fun. I'm going to be there. It's 2 back-to-back amazing weekends of Flesh and Blood. I'm so happy I qualified for Nats this past weekend, so I didn't have to feel bad about going to the Realm Invitational, or like the Pittsburgh Brawl rather, and miss out on RtNs, because that was going to weigh on me so heavy. Like if I go to this and I'm missing out on my chance to qualify at a Road to Nats, that just feels bad. But I got it. I got the win even. So it'll be a great weekend. I'm looking forward to it. I'll drop the link in the chat actually for more information for anyone who's in the area, because someone did mention they're in upstate New York. So definitely go check it out. Definitely go check it out. Hearing Matt go undefeated on a CC deck, but missing out because of draft is woof. Oh, Matt McInnes. Oh, yeah. The Lexi player that I had. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Ethan, you stream any matches today? No, because I stream from 2 to 4, and it's almost 4 right now. And I do have a bunch of work stuff to wrap up. We'll probably dive into my work life next stream. But this is my last week of work. So that's interesting. I guess that's a bad thing. But I guess it means I'll have more time for Flesh and Blood and streaming coming up soon. But until then, I do need to stop for the day because I've got more things to work on right now. Anyway, goodbye, everyone. It was super fun. Thanks for hanging out and going over the RtN with me, because this is my third, I guess, like win at this level. I've done it on Levia twice, and I wasn't convinced that like swapping off a hero would make it any easier, I guess, but I think swapping to Rhinar made it vastly easier. The tournaments this weekend were, not to say they weren't a struggle, but like when you get the matchups you want, the deck is good. So hopefully anyone who takes Rhinar can get the Oldhim bracket in their top 8, and they can win these events too. Goodbye, everyone. I'll see you later. Where can you watch the Realm match? Oh yeah, let me link that as well. I think I linked it before. They were here, Western New York Gaming Twitch. I definitely linked it up above, but they were streamed on this channel. You have to go to videos and then find, you gotta go to videos and then you gotta find past broadcasts, which are right here. So like watch these. There's both streams, Saturday and Sunday. Enjoy. All right, goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.